Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there. It was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant, including the bar and patio, from 4 PM to 11 PM. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude, however, kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations, we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete crap because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man." All I can picture is this dude thinking that he can get his way by essentially reenacting the restaurant version of that joke/urban legend with a university student who finishes his exam late, and when the proctor won't accept it, the student asks, "Do you know who I am?" Then, when told no, he grabs the stack of exam booklets and flings them into the air and runs out. My high school physics teacher told us this story from his college days, except the kid just sticks his own paper deep within the 200 paper stack and sprints out. Now I know he was just full of crap. Pretty decent physics teacher though, for an electrical engineer at least. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 PM. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines, came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant, and I could tell that for them, dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check, which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up, the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face, and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car, and the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave, so the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic, never happens, it's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were also embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. Posting this from my phone, so apologies for any typos or formatting problems. That's why you always do the triple pocket tap. That's why you play your pockets like bongos. Depends on who you ask as to whether or not this is a disaster. Place I worked at in college was a pretty nice establishment and a romantic destination. because our view overlooked the entire city. It was also located at the top of a 5-star hotel that had several projectors cycling through what was going on around the hotel in the lobby. There was no footage from the gym or pool, so it was relatively tame and never a privacy issue. Best you'd ever get were people eating, walking around the lobby, or drinking at the bar. Anyway, guy walks in with his wife and asked to be seated in a secluded area. Well, you can imagine, since it's busy and Valentine's Day, we didn't have those, so he basically waited an extra hour to make sure he was seated in the back corner. It's my section. I take their drink order and take care of them, though the husband was gone when I returned and I didn't see him go to the bathroom. Thinking nothing of it, I go to the bar to get the drink and see all of my coworkers huddled around the monitor above the bar along with everyone else in there. Sure enough, I found the husband as he was underneath the table going down on his wife. Only problem was the camera above their table had a clear view because it was situated in the corner, so now the entire hotel lobby can see as it cycles between us in the bar laughing, people checking in, and our romantic couple dining on each other. More and more people start to notice, and the bar fills up. This includes back of the house staff like dishwashers and the line cooks. Eventually it also brings out my manager, who runs over to their table, tells them what happened, and they both run out mortified. But before they do, the husband tries to stand up too quickly and flips the table, ruining all the plates, while also exposing that his fly was down and his penis out. He's yelling at my manager, the hotel manager, who came up when he saw it in the lobby, and security unzipped as he's escorted out. So yes, disaster for them, but man, they made a lot of people laugh that night. But why go to a restaurant to eat something you could get at home? The thrill is something many Alethi hunger for. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward. My first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons, and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes, he drops to one, he gives a speech about his love for her. He asks, she says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I have had to witness, alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free. He felt that bad for him. Cringed inside every time I saw him after that. The most messed up, I was working as a duty manager, and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it, I could clearly hear the conversation of the table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit, and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point I fixed the till, but am unable to step away from this car crash. Turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes, but this was next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things, as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted. He just calmly went frick this and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye, just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest, managing hotel room service, where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start having sex. Having to help with deliveries as reception messed up the bookings. I had the privilege of people answering the door naked, seeing sex toys strewn around, and one where the other members of the threesome were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. Bonus from the same night, had to call an ambulance for a woman with a dislocated shoulder. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a bukkake type scene in the shower using conditioner as the semen. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And finished her dessert. Ice cold. I was the manager of a wings and pizza place with a full bar, definitely not the kind of place you'd take someone for a romantic Valentine's Day dinner, but it was still busy because some people aren't very tactful. We had a guy who had called ahead and asked if we could put a ring and a dessert for him, and of course, we obliged. He dropped the ring off the day ahead and I put it in the safe in our office to keep it secure. Fast forward to Valentine's Day. The couple shows up and they are so obviously in love that she didn't seem to notice or care about the fact that he had brought her to a middle of the road place with a sports bar atmosphere on the most romantic day of the year. They ordered champagne, well, the local winner is best sparkling white, entrees, and it was almost time for dessert. I had used my chef skills to whip up a special chocolate strawberry tart that wasn't on the menu, just for this occasion, because why not try to make their night at least a little fancy? I went to the safe to get the ring, and it wasn't there. I was freaking out big time. I asked everyone there if they knew what the hell had happened to it. My assistant manager on site had no idea, so I called my other assistant, who also had the safe code, and they didn't know either. Finally, my bar manager mentioned that one of the owners had been in earlier and spent a little time in the office. So, at my wits' end, I called the owner. It turns out that he had seen the ring in the safe and thought it was something a customer had left behind. Figuring that he had come into an extremely lucky situation, he decided, like the scumbag he was, that he'd take it for himself and save money on a gift for his wife on Valentine's. So, I asked the server and bar manager to help stall the couple. The server told them that we were going to do something special for their big date and to hold tight. I ran out, hopped in my car, and rushed to get the ring from the owner's house because he was, as I had mentioned, a scumbag and didn't want to be bothered with bringing the ring to the restaurant himself. The bar manager went over to the table and did some complicated tableside cocktail mix that had a bunch of flair bartending tricks and ended with a flaming shot that, once dropped into the rest, made it smoke. I was really disappointed when I heard about all of this because I would have loved to see it instead of breaking a ton of traffic laws on my quest to get the ring. Finally, I rushed back in after about 15 minutes of being on the brink of a heart attack, placed the ring on the dessert, and had their server take it out. At that point, just about the entire staff was watching the table, and when we saw the look on her face, my heart finally started beating again. She said yes. And I started looking for someone else to work for the very next day. You're a superhero. My first day of work on the floor at a country club was the weekend after Valentine's Day. There was a lot of buzz in the back about this adorable family, where every year the mom brought the son out to a nice dinner at the club and the father brought the daughter to the men's section for a dinner, which shows how much pull the guy had, since women weren't allowed in that part of the club. It was their Valentine's Day tradition. The kids are both roughly 14 or 15. I'd also been filled in on the gossip that the waitress I replaced had left to have a baby. She was really young and there was blanket disapproval from the staff and a lot of the members. I'm serving the mom and son in the more upscale dining room, but getting drinks from the bar where the dad and daughter are, so I'm around both groups. I'm bringing a bottle of wine to the mom when a woman walks in with a baby in a carrier and starts handing personalized golf balls out to people as a birth announcement sort of thing. She hands one to the mom at the table and one to the son and walks off when the mom knocked her wine glass to the floor and starts whisper shouting at the son. People are congratulating the new mom and pretending to be friendly, and then each table seems to go perfectly quiet one after another. I go to the bar to get a new wine glass and see a man duck over to the dad's table and say something to him. The man gets up without saying a word, even to his daughter, and dashes into the men's locker room, leaving her sitting at the table. The whole room goes quiet, but nobody intervenes as the old waitress goes over to the table, hands the girl a golf ball, says a few words I can't hear, then walks out of the club. The girl starts sobbing. Eventually, the mom seems to have remembered the daughter because the brother comes and leads her out, and they all leave together. When I was clearing the table, I read the golf ball, which says, waitress plus member, dad, present, baby first name and member's last name, and the date. That is a very elaborate passive-aggressive revenge story. It's not very passive, in my estimation. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demanded to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip. He wrote his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty Bish wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. I used to work as an editor for one of the bigger newspapers in the US, and the role of food critic at the time was super interesting. He was a quiet, unassuming older man, and there was an impressive amount of effort put forward in keeping his identity a secret. For one, he never ate alone. He would invite coworkers, mostly on the editing side, so they wouldn't be recognized, and very occasionally his friends to go with, so he was never with the same group of people. He would also ask everyone to order something different so he could try multiple dishes without coming back too often and raising suspicion. He would hit each restaurant several times, at different times of day and different days of the week, before making his review. He would also never be the one who paid for the meal. Instead, he would have someone who came with pay for it, and then the paper would compensate them once presented with a check. There were no photos of him on the company website or anywhere in the system, and I think I only saw him actually come into the office once or twice to chat with his editor. He also made a point to have a wide variety of clothing styles to wear out, but nothing that made him stand out. I always thought it was over the top until his editor got a phone call from an extremely angry restaurant owner that had received a bad review. He was demanding to know when the critic had come in order to check the security cameras and figure out who it was, and also demanding a redo where they could give the critic a VIP experience. I get it now.